probably didn't really talk about mental health or any health in the music industry, at least. It is an always-on industry, and everything is urgent, and everything, it's 24/7, and and we are working across many different time zones too, and we're working with bands that are announcing huge things, and there is a lot of pressure. Hi, my name is Marni Wandner. I am the founder of Future Present. We're a coaching and consulting company based in New York City. So Future Present is a coaching and consulting company, and a lot of times those two things are combined. Usually when I work with people as individuals, it's either coaching or consulting, or something I jokingly refer to as consulting, which is a little bit of a combination between the two. So coaching is a lot more guidance, it's questions, it's me helping the client get to where they need to go by facilitating their insight and their transformation. Consulting is a lot more input. It's a lot more on the logistics side. So I might be helping somebody build a business. I might be helping somebody develop their marketing strategy. But there's always a little bit of coaching in there as well, because there's always an element of mindset. And I can't quite get myself to do X. And so that's a big crux of where we'll start. I also work with teams. So if I'm working with a team, or if I'm working with a company, I might be doing a series of individual coaching sessions for people on the team. I might be doing a group session, like a team session. And so sometimes what we'll do is we'll start with a team session, and then I'll do individual sessions across a certain amount of time with the people on that team. And a big part of my work is using not only all of my other trainings, but the Five Archetypes, which is a transformational system based on the Chinese 5 elements. And it really gives me a way to see people's challenges, people's strengths, where they want to go, what's holding them back, and help them get there. It really helps them see that as well, which is even more important. And when I work with a group, say we're working on something like communication between a team, we are learning about everyone's individual communication style, but we're also, learning how those all work together. So it's one of my favorite things to do. And then from there, with the individual coaching, we can go even deeper. So it ends up being a combination between health coaching, executive and leadership coaching, and performance coaching. And there's so many different topics that can bring a person or a team to me. It could be, like I said, communication. It could be time management, productivity. It could be burnout or stress management, which could easily go into a conversation about nutrition and energy levels and things like that. So all of these different, they could be confidence. I have a lot of people come to me with confidence, whether they're transitioning into a new position, or whether they're between jobs, or whether they're, starting a new role. But all of these things, no matter what somebody comes to me with, there's like this, it's almost the same work. And so that is sort of how people come into the work is different. And then we're working on, mindset, or working on transformation. We're working on building new neural pathways to get people to do things differently and really create meaningful changes in their life. I was born in New York. I grew up in South Florida, and I always wanted to move back to New York and be an actor, a dancer, a singer, and live in the city, and that was my dream. So from a very young age, I was taking all those kinds of classes. I loved it, and I went on to major in theater in college. As soon as I graduated, moved to New York, did the whole audition circuit, and landed. I did like indie films and extra work and all the stuff that you do as an actor, and got a tour of a children's theater play, a number of different plays that kind of rotated throughout this tour, and it was really amazing. I mean, I got a chance to tour the almost half the United States, everything east of the Mississippi, for 6 months. Getting paid as an actor, and then when I came back, they offered me another contract, and I was like, no, I want to live in New York. I moved here to live here. I had only lived there for a few months before I left, and kind of pursued that career a little bit more until I realized I didn't know that this lifestyle was for me anymore. And I was still pretty young. I mean, I was very young. I was in my 20s still, and never ever wanted to do anything else. So didn't have a backup plan, which is kind of weird to think about now that, there was never any other thing. But I just had to think about what else I loved. And I love writing, so I did a little stint, like maybe I'll be a writer. I love music, maybe I'll be a music writer, maybe I'll, and then I kind of honed in on the music thing, and I found an internship at a management company. I knew that artist management was a thing because I had a cousin that I wasn't in touch with, but I knew that he was an artist manager. He managed the Red Hot Chili Peppers back in the 90s, and I was like, I know that that's a job. So maybe I'll find a job at a management company. And I did, found an internship and stayed there until they gave me a job. I really fell in love with digital marketing and everything that you could do with it and how you could really help bands make a name for themselves and get out there, and really loved the band fan connection. And so that's what ended up kind of catapulting me into the digital marketing side of things. When I left that label group, I had a friend who ran an indie label, and there was a band that we really loved that he was putting out the vinyl for, and RCA was putting out the record. And he said, they want to hire us to do the digital marketing, but we don't do that. Can you do that? And I was like, oh, you can just do the digital part of marketing? That's wild. I'll totally do that. So I did that for that project, and it was really fun. And I just kind of made up what I thought digital marketing could look like, and did all these kinds of partnerships and kinds of things like that. And that sort of ended up being the start of my digital marketing agency, Sneak Attack Media, that I thought I was just going to do until I got another job, but I ran for 12 years. I was about 7 years into running my agency, and I just hit a wall. I totally burnt out. And this was over 12 years ago at this point, so we didn't really have a name. We didn't talk about burnout. We didn't have a name for it. We didn't talk about it at all. We didn't really talk about mental health or any health in the music industry, at least. I'd always checked in with all my artists, whenever an artist would come in on tour, I'd be like, how you doing? Like, really, how you doing? And that wasn't something that people really asked them in those times. So that's when I started thinking, what could it look like for me to help other people through this? Because I know for sure I'm not the only one that's going through this. And that's when I discovered health coaching, wellness coaching, which I didn't know was a thing. And I entered on a journey I was like, I don't know how much time I have for going back to school and, getting some kind of other degree or something. But I was running a company, so I had time to do an online certification. So I did a year-long program and got a certification, my first coaching certification as an integrative nutrition health coach. And I loved learning about health and wellness, and I also learning about the process of coaching and helping people, transform themselves, and just kind of being a guide in that way. And that's really what kicked off my interest in not only how to integrate wellness into the music industry, but coaching. How do I think the culture of the music industry contributes to health and wellness? I mean, I think the culture of our industry can contribute to it can affect our wellness, our health and wellness in a lot of different ways. It is an always-on industry, which is kind of just a given, I think, and an expectation, even though some companies are really good these days about kind of undoing that a little bit. And some people are really good about setting boundaries and saying, I am not always on. But as a whole, I think, we've been in this place for a really long time where it is an always on industry and everything is urgent and everything, it's 24/7 and, and we are working across many different time zones too. And we're working with bands that are announcing huge things and there is a lot of pressure. And so all of it kind of, and then there's like the comparison and with artists and on the industry side, right? We're always seeing kind of what everyone else is doing and where everyone else has gotten. So there's that kind of factored in. Certainly on the artist side, and there's a, how am I supposed to look, right? There's so much pressure around that. I talk with artists about that a lot. And that's a whole other conversation as well. But yeah, there's kind of these, and then there's the inherent, just way that the industry runs. We have to be out. That's part of our work for a lot of our roles in the industry. I mean, certainly if you're an artist, I've seen several artists kind of announcing that they're headlining earlier and they're starting to announce when their show is over, which I think is really cool, because people know, okay, like the fans will know, oh, all right, I can be in bed by this time. But it's an inherently late night industry for everyone involved. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your morning isn't going to be early. So it's, not a lot of sleep. There's obviously a lot of alcohol around, this is all getting better, thank goodness. And then the identity piece. And I was talking about this a little bit before, but we love what we do. We do feel lucky to be in this industry, and it's so, it can be so exciting and so energizing and such a thrill. And so we have these high highs and then we can have these low lows, when we finish a project or when we, are an artist coming back from tour, or even somebody on the industry side, being out with a band coming back. It's very roller coastery, layered on top of that. If you're a founder or an entrepreneur within the music industry, it's just all kinds of ups and downs. So yeah, I think there's a lot. And then the identity piece of just being so connected to what you do and loving it so much. And, if you get let go from a role, or if your company isn't doing well, or if you decide to do something else and you're not sure what it is, there's a lot of, who am I if I'm not this job or this company or this industry? There's several companies doing really great work and creating programs, for their artists, but also for their employees within the company. And, ERGs like CARE that Downtown has is, such a great way to support the employees, and just make sure people have resources that they need. I think if I could reshape any part of the music industry to be more focused on mental wellness, it would really just be for it to be an intentional consideration from the start. And not just mental health, but holistic wellness. How are we considering, when we build a tour, and this is being considered more and more now. Like we're getting to a better place of it now. But I think, just being really intentional of like how much time between things, what are the expectations? I think a shift in expectations is really valuable as well. Of, is this an always on world? Does it need to be? How are we building things in where there's support so that people can actually take a break if they and when they need it, and not expecting things immediately, and kind of giving people a little bit grace, because if the expectation is that things need to be done right away and 24/7, it's not just coming from a certain place. Everyone feels it, and so then there's that sort of, they're working, I should work, So I think that's kind of something that is shifting, and I'm happy to see it continue to change. I think the change of how the discussion of wellness and coaching and professional development, because that's kind of all of the stuff that I'm working on now, I think it was definitely a gradual change. It changed on my end because I got more comfortable talking about it, but then it also changed in the reception of what I was talking about, I think because there were other people, starting to bubble up and talking about it too. And I started working with other people that were doing it, and we would partner up and team up and do cool things together. and make it a discussion and find other people that were interested in having this discussion. And so it wasn't just me going, hey, there were other people, and there are so many other people doing it now, which is so cool. And so it's, I think it was a gradual change, and it was kind of me knowing how to talk about it a little bit more. And then it was also the industry, finding other people in the industry that were talking about it, and then finding people that were looking for it, and kind of, being a part of that groundswell as it was kind of growing and just becoming more of an acceptable topic to be discussed and a need to be talked about. And then I think the more people talked about it, and then artists started talking about it. Artists started talking about burnout and mental health, and started talking about canceling tours or postponing tours to take care of themselves. And then it, kind of bubbled into the industry. So it's been a work in progress for this, I would say, the better part of a decade. But it's also been an interesting thing being part of it, because I feel like people talk about it all the time because I'm in this a little bit of a bubble of other coaches and wellness practitioners that are talking about it. But it's, we still have a lot of work to do.